under rocks all this time.
Yeah, hidden under the rocks, and it was displaced. It's like Germans who didn't believe the Holocaust was happening because it wasn't next to them. I mean, it was wartime. People were being moved around. And the assumption was that the Jews were being gotten out of harm's way rather than be put into it. Here you have all these Nazis that are doing bad things. Well, let's put them in a place where they can be.
Oops. I think I lost you. Did I lose you, Matt? Oh dear, I think I lost Matt Owen. All right. Well, let me see if I can get him back.
Oh, somebody I've never heard of before. Probably this thing offering anyways.
Got interrupted. I'm sorry, Matt. You got interrupted. Not quite sure why. But anyway, yes, Matt Owen has great expertise. He's written a book. He's been doing the research and watching the situation very carefully where he is. And yeah, you back this giving the land back to our indigenous peoples, the federal lands here in California. And you helped Marcus with his essay a little bit, did you not?
Yeah, well, he came out with a first draft. I critiqued it and came out with a second draft. He came out with a third draft. Now we go, July. Okay. The idea basically is to retrocede public land. When we are independent, there will be no distinction between federal land and state land. Okay. It will all be the public land of our country, of our new nation. And so the idea is to, retrocede this public land, thus fulfilling our obligation under, assuming the obligation of the Second Treaty of Fort Laramie, which was under the authority of which Alcatraz was occupied. It had shut down as a prison, wasn't being used, so it qualified. The problem run into, of course, was that to which indigenous nation do you cede it? And the indigenous nation whose territory that is, I don't even know if they're still there. But indigenous Americans came from all over and claimed it. And then they run into the same problem. Well, how do we run this thing that we've claimed when we're from diverse nations? So they made up their own council. Okay. And they governed it as such until the feds said, well, okay, we're going to make it a national park. Now we're using it. Goodbye. And at that point, it's very expensive to occupy Alcatraz for any length of time. That's why one of the reasons it was abandoned in the first place as a prison was very, very expensive to occupy. And somebody escaped. He's supposed to be escape-proof. They don't know if that person washed out to the sea or what happened to him. But somebody managed to get out. And it's like, the one purpose by which we're running this very expensive prison, and has failed that purpose. So they abandoned it, and it was in the state of abandonment that qualifies it for return under the Second Treaty of Fort Laramie. And they says, you know what, we're going to enforce the Second Treaty of Fort Laramie, and we're going to come over, we're going to occupy it. So they did for a couple of years. Okay.
Wait, Matt, who was occupying it exactly?
There were people from all sorts of indigenous nations coming out
so
the U.S. came in.
They came back to get him.
I don't know if it was AIM or if AIM existed at that time, but AIM has always honored that.
Right. Gotcha. So go on.
So, like I say, finally, the federal government says we're going to turn it over to the national park system and make it into a national park. So now the use of it. Well, that's in the U.S. And you look at the federal land that's being held by the U.S. in California, and the forests are being held by the National Forest Service, the deserts by the BLM, and then there's the national parks. That is the unused half, preserved half, conserved half of California. If you want to see what California was like before, we became the world's fifth largest economy, go to that half. It's still there, and it's still pretty much in the same shape as it was. But not entirely. And of course, this administration wants to, they want to go back to the old ways of cutting down the forest and putting all kinds of toxic things in the desert and so on. Mm-hmm. And so they're threatening our own patrimony of these areas that are preserved. And who better to offer, to vouchsafe that preservation than the people that were always there. Okay. They did not regard the land as belonging to them to buy and sell. They regarded themselves as belonging to the land, having an obligation to it.
That's an interesting distinction. I like that distinction. It kind of gets the juices flowing in the brain, the creative juices. We have about 8 or 9 minutes. Can you talk a little bit about belonging to the land?
Well, they are the indigenous people, and they've always felt that they belonged to the places to which they were indigenous. They would not. It was the ridiculous real estate bubble that California was originally built on as a non-indigenous colony. They couldn't understand it. It's like, what do you mean you're buying? How do you buy land? We can put it in your pocket. And then the Yankees, during the time of the Spanish conquest, the indigenous people were reduced to serfdom. They were made serfs of the Catholic missions. And we tried to reverse that here. Okay, we tried to return the mission lands to the indigenous people. And we kept running the thwart of those who, in the Mexican government, wanted to continue the feudal practice of awarding the church lands to, their political friends, and to themselves, really, was what it boiled down to. Okay, the ruling parties in the Mexican Republic. Then come the Yankees, and they're great tons of fun. Down come the Mormons, and they take over San Bernardino as the southwestern corner of their state of Deseret, and they rip the hell out of our forests. Okay, to build San Bernardino, they denuded, clear cut the forests around what's crestline. Crestline, none of that is old growth forest. It's all replant. Okay, and thank goodness it was replanted, because right after the Mormons, clear cut that area, there was a flood that washed away the town of Aklamansa. Okay, washed away large parts of Redlands and San Bernardino. And so that was when the decision was made to replant, and thank goodness for that. But something else was developed in some of the other clear cuts. It's called a commercial forest. Okay, this is where you plant trees much more thickly than that would have occurred naturally. The idea is to make basically a tree farm. Okay, this vast tree farm of very, very closely spaced trees that you're pumping tons of water into, like you do in all agricultural uses. And the indigenous Californians look at that and they go, "Really? You're going to try to make a milpa of trees? Really? Well, don't breathe on it wrong, because it's going to burst into flame. A tree takes up a lot of water, dude. And, you try to put trees together like corn stalks, you know how dry and dusty a corn stalk can get if you don't water it all the time. You think you've got enough water to feed all them trees? Really? And so what happens? Poof! You breathe on it wrong and it turns ash. It's not, you're trying to make a milk out of trees. No. If you need that much paper, grow something else. Grow weed, grow tumbleweeds, harvest tumbleweeds. They're not indigenous. They came in the flock shipments from Russia. And, so, you need something for paper, dude, go grind up tumbleweeds. Don't be trying to make a meal out of trees. It's ridiculous. And so we've been doing ridiculous things, for over a century.
We have.
And the idea is to stop doing ridiculous things.
We're killing off things that we need by planting improperly and irrigating improperly and not using sustainable practices at all. And one of the things that we're doing, or that the current administration is doing, they've just rolled back something that says that we can't use this one chemical that kills off our bees. Now, people, without bees, we die. So, current administration is doing something that is directly, it's going to have a direct effect, which is that it is going to kill you. You are going to die if we kill our bees, and this is a rollback that your current administration is making. They are rolling back an environmental protection that was meant to protect our bees.
It's very, very alarming. During the Holocaust, IG Farben made a pesticide called Ticklon B that was used on humans.
Bees start our pollination system, which gives us our food. So without the bees, you die.
Right. And so basically, they're going to be rounding up Roundup again, and they're going to spray Roundup, and it's going to turn into Cyclone bees. Okay, it's going to do to the bees what the Nazis were doing to humans, and guess what? Humans will die because of it.
Right. Exactly right. All right. So I'm going to give you a minute now to say goodbye, Matt.
Say goodbye, Matt.
Say goodbye, Matt. All right, then. Thanks for listening, folks. You've been listening to Colexit Radio Mach 2.0, and it's been a wonderful show today. I thank you all for listening. And remember to protect your bees. Vote them out in November, your current administration, and then go have a look at calconcon.com, because we want to save California. We want to save it by turning it into an independent nation of her own, and we want to do better by her than the U.S. has ever done by itself or by its own people before, because that is our sacred duty as a budding nation. All right. Thanks so much for listening, folks. Bye-bye now.